light straight into the eyes. So I warn you, you'll be enlightened. Is it still good morning to all of you, to the distinguished speakers and to the audience? We have panel number 9, session number 9, Innovative Partnerships of European Regions. We shall be having 6 speakers, and we hope to conclude the session in due time, so coffee will not get cold and the planes would not leave without the participants of the conference. I'm not going to introduce the speakers in a row now, and I'll do it when they are going to take their floor. And at the very beginning, let me make some introduction on territorial transnational cooperation, which is based on the project we have been just finalizing. That's right. The project that we have been just finalizing in the ESPON program, European Spatial Planning Observation Network, which is the program financed from INTERREG, and I hope this short presentation will give some framework for speaking about transnational territorial cooperation. Very short. We've been investigating several forms of territorial cross-border cooperation, transnational cooperation, and we have completed a very unique database on twinning cities. We have been running the computer for several weeks. He's been crawling over Wikipedia pages to assess which cities and municipalities collaborate with which are their sister cities or the twinning cities. Cross-border, INTERREG A, transnational, INTERREG B, inter-regional, INTERREG C, and transcontinental, because we've been also doing some research on connections between Europe and Africa and Europe and Latin America. So we have to remember that transnational cooperation is not being just limited to Europe. The INTERREG C and 4 lead partners and all partners. You can see that although countries from Central Eastern Europe are participating in INTERREG C and INTERREG 4 and 3, in fact, there are not too many lead partners from this part of Europe, so we would be expecting that in the next programming period, we shall be more active in undertaking the leaderships of particular projects. You can also see some concentrations of particular participations in the INTERREG C, INTERREG 4 and 3, and this concentration do represent the activities of particular municipalities within particular regions. INTERREG B and 4 and 3, once again, similar pattern has emerged. Once again, we see concentration in the Benelux countries, in northern Italy, and not too many leaderships in Central Eastern Europe. So we are the latecomers, and I hope that we shall assume these functions in the future. Twinning cities, number of agreements, very many agreements. These are the aggregates of agreements that are being made by particular municipalities within the regions. And once again, the core of Europe, that means, you know, this European blue banana or European pentagon, is very dense with cooperation. What should be also said that Central Eastern European countries have been active in cooperation, and very many of them have been active also with Eastern European countries, that means the countries of the former Soviet Union. It's very interesting to see which other countries, other continents are within the field of interest of municipalities in Europe. Once again, when there has been out-migration, when there has been some kind of personal contacts, the twinning cities are more dense. For example, Italy, in America, also south of France, in USA, Ireland, of course, and so on. In Canada, where there has been an out-migration, the twinning cities is very strongly represented. Russia and Ukraine, no surprise that Eastern European countries, Central Eastern European countries are more active with twinning cities in the East. And China, why all of a sudden Lithuania and Latvia are so active with interrelations with China, we don't know. We have to still look for it. Finland, this is the new market which is interesting for not only companies and firms but also for municipalities in Europe. Northern Italy and Spain and Portugal, very dense contacts with Latin America, which is not any surprise. There are several models of governance. I'm not going to enter into it, but most of these manifestations of territorial cooperation are locally driven, are institutionalized, which is an optimistic factor because once an initiative is institutionalized, it has more persistence and more durability. Open and flexible arrangements, which is also the feature of the contemporary times, and joint structures, which is also an important factor. And finally, some results. I'm not going to go into it specifically, but all forms of transnational cooperation are more effective when they are focused on specific problems which are common to the parties which are engaged in this type of cooperation. Also, external borders of the EU are open to cultural, educational cooperation more than other domains, and strategic programs and planning is very crucial for having successful cooperation. Coordination matters if we think seriously about synergies, which is obvious, and I think that, and we think that there are very promising prospects for the future, and this form of cooperation, not only within INTERREG or twinning cities, but also using some other platforms of cooperation that we are going to hear about today, are to be developed in the future programming periods of the European Union. So I hope that this institutional framework, which has been filled by research which was based on documents and also on field studies that we've been conducting in some border areas of the EU, creates a good starting point for our session when we are going to talk about efficient, innovative partnerships of European regions. Thank you. That's all what I had to say for this introduction. And now we can move to our speakers. We have, as I said, 6 of them. And the first one is Mrs. Zsuzsanna Koenig from DG Research and Innovation of the European Committee. And Madame Koenig had long experience in managing and coordinating projects and programs for innovation and technology development. And if you might conclude within 10 minutes, it would be great. Okay, thank you. Yeah. Thank you. So you just to the front.
Good morning. In the next 10 minutes, I will present you joint programming. What does it mean? And I will present it in the context of Horizon 2020, the new framework program. Very shortly, I would like to give a very short definition to joint programming. It means that if a group of member states defines a common challenge which needs to be resolved by research, they come together, they spend their national budget together in a coherent way. That's joint programming. And the rationale behind it is threefold. First of all, we have social grand challenges, climate change, aging population, climate, how it impacts agriculture, food security, and so on and so forth. So we have those challenges, and it's sure that no one, not a single country, can come up with good solution for any of those. Under this tight budgetary situation, none of the countries have enough money to find through research solutions. So that's the very first obvious reason. The second reason is depicted by this diagram. It lays in the fragmentation of European public financing at the moment. You can see here that how much of the public budget actually goes into financing research in Europe. So here you have the 27 member states. You can see that by each, of course starting with Germany, a large sum of money per year goes to financing research activities. However, if you compare it to the one column, the latest one, with United States, those resources seem to be limited. If we add up all the European public money which is available for research in Europe per year, we come up with a sum of 100 billion euro per year. That's the money what we spend in Europe from public resources on research. That's already a very huge budget, very comparable to the one in US. However, the big difference is if an American researcher can compete for the totality of their budget in US, in Europe, it just is not possible because it's only the red part of the budget which is done cross-border. So the rest is that if you are a researcher in a country, you go for your national program and you apply there. But it's just the fragmented amounts of the total which is available for you, not the whole amount at all. Today, it's only the 10 to 15, depends on the field, of this total budget. It's available in Europe for cross-border cooperation. So if you are a researcher in a country and you would like to have a research with your peers in other European countries, you have this limited amount of the total for the moment. This means that the national programs is still very closed. It's done on national level. So therefore, member states, when they define that there is an area which is utmost important for everybody to get a solution, through the joint programming process, they can engage a voluntary basis, because it's only in case if they have the interest to participate in one, which results in several initiatives on variable geometry basis. You have different group of member states in the joint programming initiatives. And this will be the member states who define their own strategic research agenda, which will be a common strategic research agenda for this group of countries for the next years to implement together. So they will use either the existing national funds for that, or they can establish new national funds to make it deployed by those initiatives. And together they will do a peer review system, and then they will monitor the whole process together. So the process itself. First of all, we need those topics to be identified. Again, who are the best players to do that? High level of member states representatives came together in the GPC, it's a high-level group for joint programming, and made a selection process for identification of joint programming initiatives. They identified 10 of them. Then the Council, through decisions or conclusions, launched those initiatives. And now member states in each of those initiatives set up already the governance structure, put in place a management structure. Most of them have a vision how they would like to see them together approaching a certain topic, and started to do strategic research agendas. As joint programming is quite a young process, the fourth step, implementation of the strategic research agenda, it's not yet in place, but this will come. And which are those 10? The very first one, the joint programming initiative on Alzheimer. So it originates back to 2009, so it's quite young. And this year, they already launched their strategic research agenda, which means that all these 27 countries came up with a single strategic research agenda they're gonna implement. They already made some pilot calls just to test how they can cooperate together. The next one is FACE. It's about how climate actually affects agriculture and food. You have one on cultural heritage, then diet-related diseases. This is the healthy diet for healthy life with 21 countries. Then one actually tackling demographic change. Next one, it's about antimicrobial resistance, as we don't have now drugs which actually could kill multi-resistant bacteria, and it's super expensive to finance new drug development. It can be only done from public sources now. You have one on healthy seas, productive seas and oceans, one on water, because water is so scarce, so that's the point there. Then you have the climate knowledge, GPI, and the one on urban Europe. This was presented yesterday on one of the parallel sessions. I showed you on my diagram, the very first one, this little red part. So if you remember what I said, that today it's only 10 to 15% of the available European public funding is coordinated, which means researchers can work together with other peers from other European countries. That's the details of this little percentage of 15 to 12%. You can see that in 2010, it was around 13%. So this means that, again, the European public money spent on research in 2001 was spent for cross-border initiatives only 13% of the total, from the total. What actually consists of this 13%? It's the Eureka, ESF activities, so the Intergovernmental Research Organization schemes, and the framework program itself. It's also calculated. So you would imagine maybe rather differently the European research area, but that's the reality. So the red and the blue part, it's constant. It won't really grow in the future. Which could grow in order to have this little red part of this big blue column to evolve and to increase is the green part, which is the public-public partnerships, which are ERANET, Article 195, Joint Programming Initiative. So we expect, and that's just the best estimate we can give, that by 2012 it can really grow, but it depends on the member states and the willingness of the member states, how large is the public, the national budget, what they will intend to open up and to make available for cross-border cooperation. The idea of partnership between member states and the European Commission, it's not new. Joint programming process is new. But the idea originates back to 2000 when the concept of the European research agenda started off. And we have 3 instruments put in place in the framework program: ERANET, ERANET Plus, and Article 185. ERANET, it's about when the Commission finances networking of member states. It's not research money, it's just that member states come together and they decide on joint activities and joint calls. In an ERANET Plus, the Commission financed research itself. So when the member states made a significant amount together already for a joint call, the Commission topped it up with 1/3 of the total budget from the member states. And Article 185 is an instrument where member states decide to go further, a very deep integration on 3 levels: scientific, management, and financial. And this means, I skipped this one. And this I would like to show you through the example of EMRP, which is a metrology, which is an Article 185 on metrology. Metrology is not that visible science, but it's a super important science if you would like to do research, because it's science of measurement. And in each country, you have a national metrology institute. And those 27, most of them, decided to form together a longer-term agenda, research agenda, which actually at the moment its value of 400 million euro. And this is the 40% of the available funding for measurement science in Europe. So you can say by today that almost 40% or even more, it's coordinated in one single initiative, and this is in EMRP. So the scientific integration comes from the fact that they have a common strategic research agenda. The management integration is that, unlike in an ERANET, each agency financing their own part, here there is one agency set up which does the whole management. And the financial integration means that countries who are opted in, they have irrevocable commitment. So they cannot just decide on the second year, sorry, I'm not interested anymore, I step out. No, they are in, they pay for the joint calls. And I presented you now the ERANET and the Article 195, which are the instruments of the framework program. I told you that joint programming, it's member state initiative. Member states are there, while in the ERANET and Article 195, this is the Commission initiative. So how those link together? The first option, when they do not link, and this will be the main channel of joint programmings. In joint programming initiatives, all of the 10 I showed you, those are the member states who will mainly joint calls. This already happened in Alzheimer as a pilot call. The second option, when the member states turn to the Commission and they would request financing, then under the conditions that it fits into the Horizon 2020 objective and the European added value it's there, so enough member states, it's not only 3 of them, but really for this field, it's enough member states who are putting together, pooling their national resources, we can launch an ERANET. The third option, when the member states go into deeper integration, as I explained to you, scientific, management, and financial, it's a possibility to launch an Article 195. So this is a summary diagram which depicts the situation for Horizon 2020. You can see joint programming, member states-led initiatives, and Horizon 2020, which is the framework program. So there is a cross-cutting pace when either through a thematic call or an ERANET or an Article 195, it's an opportunity, possibility to finance joint programming initiatives, joint actions, joint calls, implementation of the strategic research agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Zsuzsanna. It's been a presentation with perfect timing. I didn't have to use my card. The next speaker will be Mr. Jacek Walendowski, who has extensive experience in promoting and helping regions with innovation and policy and the role of innovation policy in development. And he is now within the Technopolis company in Belgium. But from his profile, I'd like to stress one word, evaluation. Mr. Walendowski has experience in evaluations of all parts of evaluation, as it's said. And I think it's a very important notion which perhaps we should be keeping in mind while listening to the previous and current presentations, because we speak a lot of pumping money. We speak a lot of financing, making funds available, and we should evaluate what's the real progress in innovativeness, in technology advancements in the regions which are getting these funds. So evaluation is still ahead of us. And to some extent, there is a discrepancy in many countries, like my own country, Poland, which we are in, that we have a lot of funds available. And there is a lot of innovation in the strategies, but the final outcome of innovativeness is still not satisfactory. So evaluation is a key issue. I don't know if you're going to relate to evaluation in your presentation, but let's keep in mind this word, evaluation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for this kind introduction. I welcome everyone. I have 10 minutes, so I set up my clock. What I wanted to start with, I will focus a little bit on regional partnerships in the Baltic Sea area. And I just wanted to give you the picture to understand a little bit of the situation. This diagram shows the public and private R&D expenditures. It's according to the latest data for 2009. And you see, even looking at the very much geographical area or the macro region, there are diverse strengths in the region. You will see, obviously, the region of Copenhagen Swedish regions, etc., spending relatively more R&D investments, public, but also on the private. The red bars, they present the expenditures below the EU 27 average, and you will find most countries and regions from the new member states, such as Poland, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. But there is a different picture that is emerging if you look into the structure of R&D investments. You have some regions that really predominantly focus on financing R&D activities through public investments. In other regions, it's mostly through public expenditures. And that needs to be taken into account in order to understand that there are diverse strengths, even if we look at the same region. If we combine a little bit the different information, we also have a different picture. A very simple typology of the regions that we use in the forthcoming annual report of the project that I'm coordinating, Regional Innovation Monitor, we classified into the 3 different groups in order to help and understand on the effectiveness of the policies and types of instruments that have been developed. You will see on the blue that are the world performance or the best innovative regions. But also if you add to this characteristic, for example, industrial regions, you will see a little bit different picture emerging. And also you have the regions that are mostly focused on the service sector and public R&D. And if you really look in the Baltic Sea area, you will see that there is a diverse situation. I was last night in Szczecin, so this is the Western Pomeranian region in the northern Poland, and you will see that even in the Polish context is a kind of a different region compared to the others. So you really have to take into the account. Now I will touch very briefly on the policies. We have different types of the policies, and as it was mentioned already by the chairman, that the countries will use the policies differently. And I think this diagram nicely presents a typical sectoral cluster policy. Then we have a non-cluster approach, the sectoral cluster approach. Then there's more innovative cooperation between the different sectors. And then we have these transnational innovation networks that we know a little bit about. So I just want to update you very briefly on the situation, what is taking place in the different parts of this Baltic Sea region, if we speak geographically. A positive development, it can be mentioned that the regions start recognizing there is a need to focus and specialize. And that's one example of Warmia and Mazuri. This is a new regional innovation strategies. Very briefly, what is happening in the Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. This is a large infrastructure R&D project. This is actually the policy and the projects together. The project is called Baltic Innovative Research and Technology Infrastructure Project. It's actually combining together and bringing the joint efforts together in the 3 priority fields that are listed here. So this was a story a little bit from younger innovation systems. Now we go to these more advanced ones. And I just want to very briefly present you how it's done in the Nordic countries. For example, in Denmark, it's very much, if you remember still this diagram of the different policies, it's not very much of the sectoral approach or necessarily the cluster approach, but it's looking into the common areas that cut across the different sectors. This morning, you heard the presentation in the plenary session about the innovation platforms. And really in Sweden, this whole concept of the policies is organized around these innovation platforms, bringing the different sectors, clusters together. And there's very interesting publication by Phil Cook on the white spaces in innovation in Sweden that I would encourage you. So, evaluation. What do we actually know about the effectiveness of the policies? It's a very tricky question, but I try to give you some hints. In 2009, there was Eurobarometer, and it actually was asking what is the influence on the supply side instruments and the demand side instruments on innovation in the companies. And you will actually see there is quite low results. It's 33% for the EU average and 48% for the demand side policies. This is actually quite low, and I think we still have a long way to go to improve the effectiveness of the policies that support innovation. I'm coordinating a project called Regional Innovation Monitor, and we have in our repository about 1,000 measures supporting innovation in the different regions. And we actually looked what is effectiveness, and I just focus on the two important priority lines, the support for enterprises, research and technologies. And you will see in this graph that it's still a large share of the measures that there is indication that it's too early to a price. There is still unclear results in many of them, and those that actually achieved the positive results, and there is a robust evidence based on evaluations, is actually very little. This is the blue one line. So this actually confirmed that we still have a lot to do to improve our instruments that are in place. And I think the very important message that is coming out from our research that we need to target our support instruments to the characteristics of the region itself. We cannot design all-inclusive policies, and we have to put them more effective. But not to sound very pessimistic, there are some good examples, and there's a good example from north and central Sweden. There's actually the SLIM project, which is bringing the different sectors together, different stakeholders in a kind of mode of cooperation. And a very interesting example is the cluster of the packaging area. And this is actually the area that you would think it's a different types of activities, but they kind of joined together the furniture industries, and this is presenting how they sell actually the chairs. And there's a new concept that is behind it. So I think there is still some nice examples. The design of the policy is a bit tricky issue, and that is coming from the literature. If you just imagine that you have 3 different clusters in your own regions, you have to actually think how to connect to the global value chain. And this is very difficult in the regional context, and it's more challenging even in the international context itself. We have to also remember that the policy is one thing, but there's also the higher education institutions. And recently there was a research conducted by Nordregio looking at the Nordic countries, and they came very much to the conclusions that all the higher education institutions, they have an impact on the regional development in all types of the different regions. This impact is going to be different, but what they coming and the key message really from this presentation is that there is a really need for clarification of the goals, strategies of these higher institutions in the regional development. So we not have to only think about the policies, but also about higher education institutions. I have 1 minute left, so I just want to present you, I think, one of the most exciting examples on the recent developments that I think is going to be for the future of transnational cooperation is the European Spallation Source. It's located in Lund, Sweden. It's starting in 2013. It's going to be operational by 2009. And it's really the cooperation between both Sweden and Denmark and other European countries. And it's much more focused on the technology or research using neutrons. And it's going to be major advances for the different applications in the future. 15 seconds. Focus and specialize, that's a positive development. The remaining challenges, you have to understand this dynamics of the global network of actors. You have to get your targeted policies, investments, and make them more effective. Don't forget about higher education institutions. If you want, you can paraphrase Kennedy, so it's not what the regions can do for the higher education institutions, but what higher education institutions can do for the regions. And don't forget, importantly, that the peak of investments in the private R&D, the history shows that even if they increase 500% or 400% during the 10 years, they don't necessarily lead to the socio-economic goals. And to positive examples, there are many opportunities for cooperation in a number of fields.
Thank you very much. Once again, time discipline is one of the rare features of our speakers today. Mrs. Andere Goirigolzarri, sorry for the slow pronunciation, but it's a complicated name, from the Basque Country. And the Basque Country is a very special case because once I compared the scientific product of Catalonia and Basque Country and contradicted this to the position of the Basque Country and Catalonia on the European regional scoreboard. Catalonia has by far bigger scientific product, but the Basque Country is higher on the scoreboard, which shows that it's not necessarily a big scientific product as a main factor and driver of innovativeness of the regional local economy. So perhaps we shall hear some hints about these specific features of the Basque Country, why it's so high, not being that much scientific. Thank you. Oh, sorry, Mrs. Andere is the project manager of the internationalization department of the Basque Innovation Agency, Innobasque, which is one of the most active, and I think I visited this at some occasion some 2 years ago, and it's a very spectacular agency promoting innovativeness and technological advancement in the region. The floor is yours. 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My introduction has already been done by Zsuzsanna Koenig, so I will be quite fast in my first slides. So my presentation is about the ERA-nets, how they structure this European research area. As Zsuzsanna has already said, these ERA-nets are networks of national and regional governments and funding agencies, and whose objective is to coordinate their research activities in different fields. So this is obviously an initiative of the European Commission launched in FP6. There were already 71 ERA-nets in FP6, and in FP7 there are some new ERA-nets. There are some other ERA-nets that are continuation of some ERA-nets that were funded in FP6 and were considered successful. And as Zsuzsanna has already said, there are other initiatives like ERA-net Plus. I will be very fast because it has been already said. How do these ERA-nets contribute to the creation of the European research area? Well, as it has been shown before, it reduces the fragmentation of the European funding system. It reduces also duplication of a research execution. It improves the probability of establishing critical masses. It increases also the probability of excellence levels as the competitive base gets bigger. It's also an opportunity for the funding programs to open up. And obviously, it provides, it's a good way to learn from other countries and regions. So there's many levels of cooperation and coordination, and it depends a lot on the degree of maturity of these ERA-nets, of these networks. What we do is we exchange information and good practices. We identify and analyze common strategic issues like research activities that are being carried out in different regions or countries. We also identify or can identify opportunities and gaps in research. We also develop joint activities between national and regional programs. So we do cooperation agreements. Some ERA-nets do personnel exchange, joint training activities. As it has been before, common schemes for program monitoring and evaluation also. And then we implement joint transnational research activities, like joint calls. Ideally, these ERANETs should cooperate in a sustainable way after the contract with the European Commission ends, but this doesn't happen always. So I would like to tell you how a region like the Basque government has started joining these ERANETs or these networks. So the Basque government already joined the ERANETs in early FP6 and continues to be very committed with the initiative. It has participated in 13 ERANETs already, and as you can see there, I don't know if you see something, but the second column is these are the basic strategy bets established in the Science, Technology and Innovation Plan 2010 of the Basque government. And you can see in the third column the ERANETs in which are involved. They are all related to these strategic bets. So we are involved in coordinating an ERANET in manufacturing called ManuNet. We have been and we are involved in 2 other ERANETs, Matera and M-ERANET, related to material science and engineering. We were involved in another ERANET in sustainable tourism. Another one related to food security, Safe Food ERA. Another one in ICT, ETRANET. We had another one also in electricity networks of the future, which was called Smart Grids. Another one in biotechnology, Eurotrans Bio. Then Euronanomet in nanomedicine, MNT ERANET in micro nanotechnologies, ENT3 in transport, LEAD-ERA in lead markets, which involves renewable energy, sustainable construction, recycling, protective textiles, bio-based products and e-health, and Eco-Innovera in eco-innovation. So as you can see, we are all these ERANETs. We decided to join these ERANETs because they were very much in line with our strategy. For the Basque government, the ERANETs are a tool to internationalize their funding program. So we are involved in all the ERANETs. We are involved. All of them launch calls for proposals, and because in our opinion, these ERANETs are like a step in between the national and regional funding programs and the FP7 projects. We focus on short-term projects with a smaller consortia and with higher success ratio. Here you have some figures of the participation of the Basque country in ERANETs. So far, until 2011, there were 293 proposals submitted with Basque companies involved, and the Basque government recommended for funding more than 110 projects. So far, 38 million euro have been granted by the Basque government in ERANET projects since 2006. As you can see in the second graph, it's being increased, this amount, and nearly 400 SMEs or Basque companies, mostly SMEs, have been supported in or have participated in these proposals. You can see in the first graph, you see a big, like an ERANET, which has a bigger participation than the others. That's ManuNet. It's the ERANET in manufacturing, And why is it? Manunet is the Basque Country's industrial base has is an important engine for the economic growth. As you can see there, the manufacturing plays a major role in the Basque industry. Some figures like 24% of the GDP is the industrial sector amounts 24% of the GDP, and 70% of the people working in the Basque industry work in manufacturing companies. The strategic areas of the business competitiveness plan of 2010-2013, one of the aims was to promote higher value-added production through R&D and innovation. Okay, sorry, so we'll go faster. So what we do, we want to improve the competitiveness, increase in manufacturing added value, and adapt traditional sectors to new market needs. What we did is, since the Basque government believed that Neranet in manufacturing was needed, and this need was had to be demonstrated. So in 2004, we launched the specific support action, Manunet SSA, and we draw a map of that identified the regions and countries with a strong industrial or manufacturing sector and adequate funding programs in the field of manufacturing. Then, as we show this need for a manufacturing for an ERANET in the field of manufacturing, we launched a Manunet coordination action. It was mainly a regional ERANET. We had also countries involved, but we had a strong, big number of countries. And then, due to the success of Manunet 1, we launched a Manunet 2 in 2011. We are still increasing the number of regions and countries participating in these ERANETs. Our aim in Manunet is to foster the competitiveness of the Europe's manufacturing industry by supporting the funding of manufacturing research projects performed by companies, preferably SMEs, universities, and research centers. This is how it is. Well, it is coordinated by Innobasque, the Basque Innovation Agency, and the leader is the Basque government. It has 13 countries and 11 regions involved. You see there we have 4 regions in Spain, Asturias, Basque Country, Catalonia, and Navarra, 2 regions in Italy, Piedmont and Tuscany. Then, okay. So as you can see there, we have a good consortia, and we are still willing to increase the number of countries and regions. Here you see some figures of the Manunet calls. We have already launched 6 calls. In the first 5 calls, we received 650 proposals. We had more than 1,500 SMEs involved in the first 5 calls. And yeah, so I just wanted to, you see here the Manunet website is manunet.net. I want to say that it's, and it's towards the Commission, that it's a very good opportunity for the European Commission. We saw that when we prepared this Manunet 2 proposal, we evaluated the impact of Manunet 1, and we saw that we multiplied the funding, the public funding by 30. The amount we received from the Commission was multiplied by 30. This means that we gave a huge amount of public funding to these companies, and the funding or the money mobilized by this projects in manufacturing was multiplied by 50. So I think it's a very good opportunity to this kind of ERANETs are very good opportunities. So I had to skip some parts, but I was too long.
I'm sorry, we cannot extend the program. Thanks a lot. Networking, inter-regional collaboration, determination, and support from national or regional government. These seem to be the factors that explain the Basque miracle. Okay, now we move to the north of Europe, and Niklas Wallenberg is from Gothenburg, responsible for the science park in Gothenburg, and that's a good connection with one of the presentations in the previous plenary session when we've been hearing about the whole of the region, and now concentration on one particular initiative in Gothenburg. You have 10 minutes.
Thanks. Hello. My name is, as you just heard, Niklas Wahlberg. Let's see now if this works. Do I need to push it the wrong way? Ah, there it is. I will, during 10 minutes now, focus on a concept we have called Open Arena. The development I will be talking about has been possible historically, is running today, and will be possible to develop through the very strong drive and support and leadership from the West Sweden region. I am a living, or I represent a living example and a result from a long-term strategical effort from one region in Europe on developing these sort of environments. I will just, through these 10 minutes, do it in 3 parts. I need to give you a very brief overview of what Lindholmen Science Park is. I will share you some of my thoughts. That is no rocket science about why it is important to collaborate, and show you some examples of how we do and what we've done within this open arena concept. Lindholmen in 3 minutes. This can take 2 hours if I have the time, but I won't this time. Lindholmen Science Park is partly a geographical area in the center part of Gothenburg in the West Sweden region. This was during the 70s a shipyard industry area. So right at Lindholmen, big boats and ships were built, but that industrial era collapsed in the 70s, and this area was reinvested into a new sort of environment. But in this physical environment, we have a number of different companies, universities, high schools, and public authorities on place. The company Lindholmen Science Park was formed 12 years ago. To make it simple, the board said, make Lindholmen internationally acclaimed. The first target was to attract 10,000 people working there within 5 to 10 years, and that we passed now a couple of years ago. We are right now at 18,000 people coming to Lindholmen every morning, and the new target is 30,000 within 5 to 10 years again. And from the beginning, Lindholmen was set in 3 different focus areas: intelligent vehicles and transport systems, mobile internet, or nowadays ICT, and modern media and design. We work out from the thought of collaborating. So of course, I would not be successful if I didn't have a huge set of partners to the concept of Lindholmen. Mainly the actors you see on these pictures are Swedish or global organizations with heritages from Sweden, but we have a strong network across Europe and the rest of the world as well. All these partners, and some of them are of course not mentioned because the picture is too small. They work around the common thought of having a common infrastructure as a neutral physical meeting place, developing technical infrastructure, working a lot around the subject of open innovation these days, and supplying a support to the concept to make it work. We believe strongly that the old saying of R&D is too limited. We want to add 2 Ds, and we've been arguing about this for some time now, and we see a start both regionally, nationally, and also European-wise now that demonstration, and that is test and demonstration, is very essential to add to the equation so we actually get results out. And also not to forget the deployment part, so we actually get new companies and new products and stuff out on the market. So we talk about R&D, DD, that's our mantra. And the activities from Lindholmen as such is very focused on the second D, the demonstration D. Why do we need to collaborate? Well, you can build a science park or a hub in one way of having a couple of people working only on some sort of cluster density perspective, attracting companies and personnel to have their offices in the same building. But for us, that is not enough. That will not create the collaborative environment. So from the start of Lindholmen, the collaboration dimension was set from the very early stages. And that's where we sort of developed the concept of Open Arena Lindholmen to be a tool to make organizations really, truly collaborate in projects and programs. From a buzzword perspective, of course, there are a lot of, and you know these words, global challenges. Business is changing. I mean, one of my partners, AB Volvo, is more and more seeing that they will, for the future now, sell transport solutions rather than trucks and buses, which sort of transforms their business. We know, and we've heard it yesterday and today as well, that the public-private partnership is something that is coming very strongly. We know that there is knowledge everywhere. Take this conference, for example. We have a lot of strong knowledge all across Europe, but also in other parts of the world. And we are connected. So, I mean, there are possibilities and potentials in collaborating. A finding we have made at Lindholmen as well is no rocket science, but if you treat people right, they believe finally that there are more to gain than losses made by collaborating and sharing ideas and thoughts. Open Arena Lindholmen. Well, this is a concept that sort of stretches from both a physical standpoint, because we believe strongly as being human beings, we still want to meet physically. So we've put a lot of efforts in creating a physical environment that sort of forms a context for collaborative efforts. On the top of this picture, and I will not walk you through all these acronyms, is a big set of different national efforts in Sweden that is either traditional academic research centers or national programs that now have their base and are hosted by Lindholmen Science Park in Gothenburg. So what we provide in this open arena concept is you can say a context for a number of different collaborative efforts in themselves. The top one, SAFER, is the National Center for Research in Traffic and Vehicle Safety in Sweden. They have their front door into the open arena environment and sort of bump into all other sorts of people, and from students to researchers to business people, politicians, authority people, and basically anybody. So what we try to do is to form one hub in Europe where a lot of different organizations can meet, and we play on the thought that we need to form the context for many things to bring them together. So the physical dimension is important. And in some contexts, like the visual arena, we have also developed not only a national program, but also a physical environment where that is dedicated to one research and technical area, and that is visualization, which is like what I'm doing right now, showing pictures, but you can do it much more advanced with 3D and so on. This environment is now, we opened it a month ago, and it's now open to all actors that want to be in the system or have their office somewhere else but wants to join. The big investment we could make in this is a so-called big-scale display system. It doesn't look so big on the picture, but the TV set, so to say, is 6 by 3 meters and can project things in 3D with a top resolution. And that is, of course, not for me to sit there and watch football now this summer. This is a resource for especially SME companies, but also the big companies, researchers at universities or institutes, to use as a common infrastructure and a common base. And we're constantly, Mrs. Helena Nilsson mentioned this morning as well, another big project in the same area that we call ASTA, which is a physical environment where a resource for Europe now, really, to test and demonstrate new advanced systems for active safety in traffic primarily, but that can be evolved over time. So Lindholmen doesn't have any borders. I mean, of course, in the area physically now we have a number of companies residing, but I work with everybody. We need to acknowledge that the world is global, that there is a lot of knowledge in Europe, and we want to work all across Europe connecting, and I really want to see a development of these sort of arenas all across Europe. So finally, I mean, this is one of the fantastic buildings. Chalmers, the University of Technology, opened last year at Lindholmen, and you can see their band playing in front of it. So who wants to join? This is an open invitation because I strongly believe that we Europe, or we together will only survive and have a positive development if we find the ways to collaborate. And I'm constantly trying to seek out who to work with across Europe and find other bodies to work together with, as we are developing ties also with Brazil and China, of course, for certain reasons. Thank you.
And now we move back to the south, to Turkey. Mr. Turkay is associate professor at Koç University, which, sorry to admit, I had to find out in Google out, it's in Istanbul, which does not say in your profile, but now we know it's Istanbul. It's a relatively new university, established 1993, and Professor Turkay is active not only in research, but also he's director of Koç IBM Supply Chain Research. So it's also a kind of business orientation of the university, and we have a word about it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for this nice introduction. I am going to talk about a project that we started as a Regions of Knowledge project, and I'm going to talk about the details and success story of this project. The title is Innovation Through Collaboration of Distinct Regions. And last year, we submitted a project in the area of transportation, sustainable surface transportation, and it's a Regions of Knowledge project, and the main motivation is cooperation and networking among specialized clusters, and we have this triple helix structure in all of the regions that participate in this project. And our primary focus is on strategies to exchange knowledge and organize joint research and innovation processes, and also training of young professionals in this area is also another important concern for us. And another concern is we want to disseminate and expand the knowledge generated within this project beyond European clusters to Middle East, to North Africa, maybe South America, maybe Asia. And also the primary focus is exploring new ways to sustainable logistics in Europe. Right? So these are the partners. As you can see, we have a very good representation from Europe. We have the North Rhine-Westphalia cluster, which is very active industrially, and Wallonia cluster, Normandy in France, Carinthia in Austria, Odessa, and Istanbul, Turkey. As you can see, actually, Odessa and Istanbul are not part of European Union, but we found out that there is a very strong link of these two logistics clusters with the European, operations of many of the companies. So, what are the characteristics of partners? I think the primary characteristics of the partners that the evaluators looked favorably is the diversity of the representation among the players or clusters. First of all, we have representation from a geographical diversity of Europe. East, west, south, and north is well represented. And the culture or business culture among all of these clusters are different. They show strong variation. For example, if you talk about Germany, you know that it's very well structured, it's very well organized. And if you talk about Normandy cluster, it is very well established. In addition, Carinthia is also very well structured. If you consider Istanbul, it is highly chaotic. You know, there's no structure, no organization. You know, everything happens by itself. So it is self-organizing in a way. And in terms of industry, I mean, if you look at the German industry, French industry, it is very much mature, right? Their production base is mature and the technology is mature. And if you consider countries or clusters like Istanbul cluster, it is very progressive. Yeah, every year, I mean, GDP is increasing by 10% for the last 5 years. So it is very progressive, and the needs are much different than mature, basically, areas. And also countries like Odessa are in transition. Right now, they are trying to define a role for themselves in changing world scheme. And the goals are the integration of research in the area of green logistics, because logistics is an important part of all of the activities. It accounts approximately for 10% of grand national product in any region and any country. So making it green is going to contribute a lot to achieving sustainable society. And we want to establish a trans-regional innovation system so that the innovation capacity between different regions can be coupled, and also the knowledge of transfer will be established in this project. And also training young experts and analysis of cluster competitiveness is an important concern for us. And I want to focus on Istanbul because Istanbul represents a very challenging and unique case anywhere in the world. Most of you know the location of Istanbul, but if you look at the geography of Istanbul, here, you see that there is Black Sea, there is the Sea of Marmara, and there is a Strait of Bosphorus. What happens is the width of the strait is about 1 kilometer at the narrowest point, and it stretches up to 2.5 kilometers at the widest point. And historically, this area of Istanbul has been the capital of 3 empires, Byzantine Empire, East Roman Empire, and Ottoman Empire. And most of the business activities and industrial activities are located on this European side. But since the value of the land is very expensive, most of the people live here. So this brings a tremendous challenge in terms of logistics and also transportation, because there is always one-way transport during rush hour. So it's a very challenging geography. And also, most of the big cities, metropolitan areas, have a growth structure like onion rings. And in Istanbul, you cannot do that, because the geography or topology is rectangular, which is divided in the middle. So you cannot basically plan a city like onion rings. So the challenges are very unique. And moreover, what happens is, due to historical reasons, Istanbul and its surrounding region generates about 50% of Turkish GDP. So it's a large amount of activity in different sectors, and more than 60% of Turkish exports to European Union countries pass through Istanbul. Population is around inhabitants, let me say. Population, differs how you count it. Inhabitants are approximately 14 million, and every day, either as a businessman or as a tourist, 3 million visits Istanbul. So it is approximately 17 million people living in the city at any instant. And Due to the different reasons, the infrastructure is shared for moving people and moving the goods. And as I told you, the topography is very challenging. So if you want to establish anything sustainable, you have to consider that you have a rectangle here, and you have a one, at the minimum, 1 kilometer distance between them. And establishing an infrastructure to connect these two sides to each other is very, very expensive. Okay. In order to understand the structure of the transportation and logistics sector, the first thing that we did is to apply the diamond method of Michael Porter. And in this case, in terms of strategy, we saw that the strategy is at the medium or high level. The local authority wants to solve this problem because they want to keep the capability of Istanbul generating high revenue for the national economy and provide good jobs. And also, the central government believes in the role of Istanbul because it can attract a young talent from Turkey, different regions, and also from international companies. So this actually brings a problem into the mix because everyone wants to do something. They have good intentions, but it is too much because everyone wants to do something. There is, okay. Input, the dominant transportation mechanism is road transportation. Labor cost is also reasonable in terms of European standards, and also demand is very high, right? And also supporting agency is very low. So in that case, we have a medium-level competitiveness in Istanbul in terms of logistics. And on top of that, we also established a rigorous network model, optimization model, to capture the dynamics of the system behavior in order to project into the future development of the area. And this is the result that we came up with the methodology in the first case, the diamond method. The second one is network analysis. And as you can see, we established a proposal to the central government in order to facilitate the growth of the sector and satisfy the demand from the industry and different service sectors. And I'm happy to report that, 2 weeks ago, the Minister of Transport announced that central government will be investing around 40 billion euro to establish or realize this plan. Most of the plan is what we proposed, and there are also some additional elements. Right? So looking into the future, I think this type of projects are perfect opportunity for networking, benchmarking, and also exchange of technical solutions. Many of the things that we saw during the execution of project is already available in different partners because mature partners are basically established, but we have different set of problems. And also, we do a lot of mentoring for diverse needs. For example, Ukraine is very close to us, but they are just trying to develop or define their role in the grand scheme of things. And several bilateral collaboration projects are already underway. Great contribution to regions, specifically for Istanbul. This has been a great contribution. And also our basic problem is the future is uncertain because the Regions of Knowledge project that I learned here is not going to be continued or supported in the future. Okay? And my last word is diversity makes you better because if you bring or regions with different characteristics, you learn a lot from each other. Thank you very much.
And so we come back to Poland, to Mrs. Elżbieta Książek, who is the Deputy Director of Poznan Science Technology Park, which is the first technology park in Poland. It has to be mentioned, and also this park is active, Mrs. Książek is active as a coordinator of INTERREG 4C project Know-Hub. So once again, we come back to my initial presentation about INTERREG, which makes me happy that what I said was not completely in vain.
Thank you very much.
You have final 10 minutes, and then we have Coffee, presumably.
I will do my best. I'm going to tell you a story, or actually of a project that is on the start, so not much to tell. So I have some chances with those 10 minutes, but I'm going also to tell you about a little bit of different dimension of partnerships of European regions, which is funded by INTERREG 4C project. To understand this dimension, probably we need to know what INTERREG 4C project is. So I would like to ask you to raise your hand if you have been somehow involved or heard what INTERREG 4C program is. Okay, most of you, then I don't need to explain. That's very good. That will make my story...
Coffee break to those who don't know.
Yes, even shorter. That means that we are talking about regions, mostly those that are responsible for regional policies, collaborating in learning together or exchanging of experience. But what is the partnerships here? First of all, thanks to the previous speakers, I don't need to now tell you that we in Europe, we need to do something. We already know this, and we need to do something about innovation seriously, not only to show how much money have been spent on it. And we also have heard that European regions need to be smart. First of all, yesterday we've heard from the European Commission, from the Smart Specialization Strategies platform, and from Mrs. Claire de Villarish, that regional policies need to advance, need to be much smarter. We also heard today from Jacek that the instruments that are used for policies need to be effective and needs to be smart as well. We don't need to only show the results in hard infrastructure, but we need to look for instruments that change the behavior of companies, researchers, and other actors. If we invest in infrastructure and the culture is not there, the result will be nothing. If we say that our instrument is to have an envelope of money on specific sector or research, it's not an instrument at all. So the challenge is there for the regions to do something, and actually this message have been heard from people that we would like to take the message from, but I think we need to have a practitioner leg on this. When we've heard about smart specialization strategies from European Commission, those regions that you have on the slide, I think it's a very good idea. But we need to take it from the practice point of view as well, how you really do it. When we hear about the process that you have to involve everybody, you have to ask yourself, involve everybody means what? How you do it? Who is everybody actually in the region? If you have a region of 3 million people, you have to get them on board, everybody, you knock to the door of everybody, or what is it? What process looks like? And what means smart strategies? As you see, our partners are really diversified regions. There are we don't have regions that actually score the best in the spending for research and innovation in Europe. We don't have the regions that score the best in the number of patents, but we have regions that have really shown that they know how to make effective innovation policy that have changed the regions. This is the Basque Country, this is Lower Austria, and we have regions that don't have that much of an experience, and we want together to help each other in a partnership to go a little bit in this process of learning, of making strategies, implementing it, and getting new strategies on a spiral a little bit higher with the help of practitioners. So that's the main objective, to get the experience and knowledge of the practitioners of how to design and implement the smart and effective strategies for innovation. When we yesterday discussed about smart strategies. There was quite acute summary of the weaknesses of regional innovation strategies, which I would not agree with all. It's not that they were that weak in how the process looked like. Most of them, they were very good in having people on board and really deciding what they want to do for the regions. But I would add another weakness. Most of them were not implemented well. This we want to change and see how to do it, and we want to look for effective policy instrument. I will save you from a story about like how one of the most popular and fashion instrument, which is research vouchers, when it was invented in Limburg in a risk project in the 90s, and now seems to be one of the most popular instrument now, how it has been distorted by the fact that you need to apply state aid regulation, and it doesn't turn the results as it was meant to be. So how this partnership is going to work? First of all, we want to use the practitioners to review the policy in 10 partner regions to see where we are in those spirals of the policy loop. And we make partners of one region is reviewing another region, but is reviewed by yet another region, which is not partnerships of two, but making a kind of a circle so we can get out of those reviews. I emphasize by practitioners, input to learning process in partnerships on workshops on what smart specialization strategies can mean for regions, what effective instrument can be used, but also process in the regions themselves when we want to improve the policies on the way. We call our project Know Hub because we want to be a knowledge hub. We want to codify the knowledge that is in practitioners' heads, but also in the heads of experts in such a way that it can be used by anybody interested in regional innovation policies. So we are going to set up a smart encyclopedia in which we will explain different notions of regional innovation policies, repository of good practices, and have modern tools like blog, newsletters, and videos there. Why anybody that is not yet involved in the project should be interested? Because it will be a user-friendly source of knowledge on the theory of practice of strategies and instruments. It's not yet set. We have signed the subsidy contract in April, and we have just finished with the peer review methodology, and peer review has just started. 2 visits have taken place. And sorry? 2 minutes. Yep. So the important part of the learning that we will be able to, for sharing with you will be first in the autumn, when we will start with showing what are the results. Here you have the process of an idea how it should look, of the idea of the project, starting with peer review, which should start the regional process to involve the people in thinking of where we are and what we can change to identify good practice, to identify the issues to work on. Then, which are learning circles, workshops, when we discuss together how to solve issues that we have identified, to continue the regional process, taking the lessons from the review and from the workshops, to get it together with the regional actors and to prepare regional action plans, and to share with all of the others through what we call smart communication. Thank you for your attention. Hope we can share more.
Thanks all the speakers. I'm sorry, but we have consumed our time. I must have been a very inefficient moderator not to be able to keep the speakers to the 10-minute limit. And I'll take only 1 minute of your time. I'm sorry I won't open any discussion because we should not be late for the break. And I think that this innovative partnerships for European regions has been a fruitful session, and our speakers have proved that the title of the session was a correct one and that organizing such a session was a good idea of the organizers. So thank all the speakers. Once again, please take my apologies for not opening the discussion, but we have consumed our time and I should not compromise coffee break because cold coffee is the worst thing which may happen during a conference. Thank you.